Hey there. Well, here I am. Took me a moment to get signed on here. My Wi Fi was not cooperating, but I'm here. I'm about 1 minute late with the show, but glad to join you. Last week, I had to cancel the show due to illness. And you can probably still hear some traces of mucus in my voice, some congestion, but it's nowhere near as severe as it was last week. And excuse me, just 1 second here. The dreaded thing where I thought, am I going to have to wipe my nose off camera? But I did. Hi, Ward. Yes, I'm here now. Sort of kind of better now. Last week, I had explained that on Sunday, I had just about completely lost my voice when I was talking like this. And when I spoke to you Monday, I was at least had a voice, but I thought instinctively I had better conserve my voice because my first responsibility, of course, is to Dr. Whimsy Anderson in the show that I do with her on Tuesdays. So I wisely rested my voice. And anyway, here I am today. Yeah, Warren, I'm going to try not to overdo it. I apologize for taking care of my nose there, the very thing I said I would never do on a live show. But what do you do once you're here other than stop the show and start again? So I hope my viewers will please forgive me for being very human right now. But all in all, I'm better than many because I have friends who have been hit with the flu bug. A lot of viruses going around right now, certainly here in Southern California. Um, I'm making a point of wearing my mask now when I go to the grocery store or post office, any place like that. But I'm keeping public places to the bare minimum wherever it is possible. I've been asked if I wanted to go to see a movie at the theater, and I think it just does not seem like a wise thing to sit in a crowded movie theater right now. That's the reason I haven't seen Wicked yet. And I was going to do the pay per view, but I see now it's going to be on Peacock. They don't say when, they just say in the commercials, coming soon. So I figured, well, I've waited this long, I'll wait a little bit longer. Let's see here. I was looking at some comments. Yeah, watch out for the Ronavirus. Oh, I am. I'm really concerned about that. Human viruses, chicken viruses, who knows what else is going on right now. It's a very, very stressful time right now. Um, Yeah, Ward, you've been wearing your mask too. Yeah, I have a number of people who are starting to wear their masks again, saying, I don't care if it looks ridiculous. I don't care. We've got to protect ourselves, our health, whatever good it does. And it does at least protect us from respiratory droplets and that type of thing. Um, but I'm also trying to just watch my nutrition, watch my rest. When worse comes to worse, and it has, as like last week, I have a home juicer. Many years ago, I was in the health industry. We had a juice bar in the store. I dealt with nutrition, vitamins, herbs, homeopathy, putting people in nutritional programs. Hence, a lot of celebrities I met that way. But we had a juice bar in there, and we used to make something called a wellness shot. And a wellness shot consists of garlic juice, lemon juice, garlic, ginger, and cayenne. And it is utterly, utterly repugnant. It's like one of the worst things I've ever tasted in my life. And I know that when we made it in the store, they use like the liquid kyolic garlic. When I make it, I don't play around. I take an actual bulb of garlic, drop it in the juicer. I break up big pieces of ginger, drop those in there, the lemon juice. Oh yes, and oil of oregano. 12 drops of oil of oregano, and hit the button, extract it, and gulp the thing down. and then I usually have to spend the next 3 minutes laying down to fight the nausea to not let it come back up, but those things really do kill just about anything, and sometimes I feel like they're gonna kill me, but they work, and I figure it's better to go through a little bit of misery in the moment rather than to be deathly ill like with this flu bug. And hey, Joyce, thanks for joining. It's so good to have you here. Oh, Ward, you were in Spain. Yeah, I love Spain. I love most of my time in Spain has been around Barcelona. Also, I don't know if you were ever in a little beachside community. It's about a 35-minute train ride from there called Sitges. I adored Sitges, but when I was there, I had residents say, "Please, please don't go back to America and tell people about us because we don't want a lot of tourists coming here." So I don't think I'm going to exactly incite a tourist drive now by just mentioning Sitges, Spain, but it's quite a special place. Oh yeah, I've heard of that. People eating raw cloves of garlic. Someone who used to do that was Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt used to eat a chocolate covered garlic bulb every day, and she claimed that's where she got her fortitude and strength to keep up her intense schedule. And oh, were you were asking about Sasha? Well, Sasha is waking her up right now, but as you can see, she's okay. My sweet little Siamese. She's saying, "Why are you waking me up?" I'm gonna put her back down. I should have left her alone because usually when I get her awake and wound up, she's the Tasmanian devil. Uh, last week I was doing the show with Whimsy, and I had to keep holding Sasha to keep her from jumping up here on the keyboard and hence shutting down the show. Hi, Goddess Fowl. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm doing a lot better than last week. I thank you all for coming back this week because um, twice I've had to cancel the show, in recent months. Once was because of my friend Anastasia, her car. She had some issues being towed. And then there was the issue with my voice, but I do try my very best to be here every Monday. All Ward, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Joyce, I went to a beach town south of there, La Playa, something of other. Yeah, I have to say I'm ignorant about what's below Sitges. I don't really know the region that well, other than all my time in Barcelona, and then it was Sitges. And the reason I was in Sitges was for a wedding of a very dear friend of mine who lived there. And oh wait, I told this story not too long ago about my impetuous European visit, uh, where I went to Europe for a 3-day weekend, flew there, went there for the wedding, stayed, and then got on the plane and headed straight back home. One of the most decadent things I've ever done in my life, and I have no regrets about it. And La Playa means the beach in Spanish. That's interesting. I was saying, "Goddess, did you study classic homeopathy?" Yes. I found it way too much. I only recently found practical homeopathy with protocols. Well, you see, it used to be my how I earned my living. Homeopathy, vitamins, nutrition, herbs. I was in the field for a long time, and that's how I met my dear friend Dr. Whimsy that I do the show with on Tuesdays. She, of course, is a naturopathic doctor, and she used to come into our store. She was our resident naturopath 1 day a week, and it grew into 3 days a week. And we became partners in crime together. And we've been close friends ever since. But no, homeopathy is so fascinating. The purposes, and it's not just for physical ailments. I have a spiritual healer friend in North Carolina named Jennifer Norton, and she uses homeopathy for a lot of emotional issues. It's just quite amazing. I could go much, much further with it than what I do know. I know mainly uses of it for physical use. Um, yeah, south of Barcelona. Yeah, I kind of figured that. Joyce, have you been to Barcelona? I'm assuming you have, since you've been there south of that. It is just a magnificent city. Um, I could easily live there, and way things are going right now in the country might be something to think about, but I just felt so immediately at home there. And, I'm a big believer in past lives. I'm certain I've been there before, and I had that same feeling about Venice when I was in Italy. I knew I'd been there also. Uh, did either of you see the replica of Columbus's ship, the Santa Maria? No, I didn't see that. I mean, I please pardon me. I'm so sorry. I know this is awful to dab my nose, but I'm still dealing with some congestion here. Um, I remember the statue of Columbus, facing outward toward the ocean, but I don't remember the replica of the ship. Um, no, I should have had time to go because first time I was there for almost 5. I think I was there for 5 days. And yeah, oh yeah, I remember Barcelona Harbor. Oh yeah, it definitely was there. I just don't remember the replica of the ship. I don't know how I missed that. Um, but when I go to Europe, I like to walk. I like to walk as much as I can because I want to feel part of the community and the people and the cafes and the shops and everything. So as a result, I think the third day I was there, my feet were so covered in blisters. I was in my hotel room and I almost could not even get out of bed to walk to the bathroom. I actually had to crawl. My feet were so bad. And I thought, I don't want to spend my last 2 days in Barcelona sitting in a hotel room watching CNN International. So I managed to hobble down to a local pharmacy and I think I bought the equivalents about 30, maybe $40 worth of Dr. Scholl's pads, like the moleskin and the blister pads and all that. And I just covered my feet with all those little stick-on things and wrapped them up. And I was good to go. And I kept on walking and dealt with my bloody feet when I got home. Um, but I'm sorry I missed seeing that in the Barcelona harbor. I just remember because I was there in this it was July. I was there actually on one of my birthdays, and I remember it just being so hot, but it was just so beautiful. I remember the ocean and oh yeah, that's one of the things I remember. I so wanted to go swimming in the Mediterranean. Never had done that. There I was, but because of my feet with all those open sores and everything, I was afraid to get in the water. I was so afraid of getting some kind of serious infection, and so I wasn't able to do it. That's something that comes to mind. Or it's tiny, about as small as the boat where Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner were the last night of her life. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. We could go into a whole show there on that topic, but I knew it was a little boat. I knew that just from my history class, like grade school, high school, seeing diagrams and pictures. I mean, it was just shocking that people could have actually ridden something like that all the way across the Atlantic and survived in one piece. So, anyway, I'm going to see how long my voice is going to hold up today. And oh yeah, there were no hammocks on there either. Oh my. And then I can only imagine they couldn't pack much in the way of food or provisions. I guess they probably had to live off of fish they caught. I don't see how they could have packed very much with them. And uh, new world innovation. Yeah, I don't know how they did it. But I don't know if anybody saw the Saturday Night Live special last night. I know we're supposed to say SNL now. I'm from the generation where it was Saturday Night Live. And I'm also old enough to remember watching the very first episode ever, which they replayed this Saturday night, the one with George Carlin hosting. And that in itself brought back memories because in my store, well, I worked in some different locations in Los Angeles. One of the places I worked was in Brentwood. And one of my regular customers was George Carlin. I'd sometimes see him 2 and 3 times a week. I mean, just a wonderful man. And I've mentioned before about comedians I've met in real life, and I'm going to mention others because I'm gonna talk a lot about SNL today. George Carlin, very serious in real life, not a laugh a minute kind of guy, much more serious, much more low key, but very, very intelligent. Just a fascinating person to talk to. So many times when I watch these shows and I see people like that, it just automatically triggers memories like, oh, I knew George Carlin. I knew George Carlin. Then I saw Paul Simon on there. And of course, I have a wonderful memory of just 5 years ago seeing Paul Simon at the Hollywood Bowl. Um, yeah, what was that? Not every comedian could be George Burns off stage. No, my experience is very few, if any, comedians are like that off stage. I think the closest maybe, I used to know Russell Brand. Russell Brand used to come in a lot, and, uh, I know lots and lots of controversy about Russell Brand. We could talk about that, but from my personal experience, he was so sweet to me. He always treated me with great kindness and respect, and that's what I choose to focus on. But, when I first knew him, he was very much on. You know what I mean? We're talking about comedians in real life being low key. No, he was about as on could be, like, all the light switches were flipped up, and he was just constantly cracking jokes, but I mean, also lewd, vulgar, everything that he's known for, he was doing it in real life. I mean, some of his comments, I was like, "Oh, no." I'm not even gonna repeat them here. Some were so X-rated, but as he got to know me, he started to drop that facade. And I realize now a lot of that was I think with a lot of comedians, it's like a facade, it's a defense. A lot of comedians are actually quite shy. And I mean, I've seen this for myself. And I quickly found Russell to be a little more on the shy side, very, very sweet, very gentle. And that's the side he began showing to me a lot more. Very thoughtful man. I mean, the one celebrity who ever bought me a drink, he put me on his guest list whenever I wanted to. This was when he was doing his television show here in the city. He would always put me on the VIP guest list whenever I wanted to come to see an episode. But I just remember having lots of thoughtful conversations with him. And I will say this about Russell Brand. He was wonderful with children. Whenever people would bring children into the store, he knew how to relate to them, speak to them on their level, and it was very sweet to watch Russell with children. So much so, I'm sure you've all heard of that old Art Linkletter show, Kids Say the Darndest Things, and Russell being a Brit had never heard of it, and I said, "Russell, if I watch some of these episodes on YouTube if they're on there, because I think you would be incredible hosting a show like that." Now, granted, there probably would have been a lot of uproar from parents. No way am I letting my child watch Russell Brand. But the Russell I saw was just magical with children, and children adored him right back. And I haven't seen Russell for a few years, but I understand now he's a father. He has a couple of kids, and I'd like to see how he is with them. But I think he would have been wonderful hosting a show like that. But anyway, I mean to go off on Russell Brand, but he just came to mind as somebody who was a little closer to his public persona. Let's see, there were some comments there. Oh yeah, Robin Williams did have quiet times. Yeah, I've heard that about him. I have a friend who there used to be not used to be, there is a famous comedy troupe here in Los Angeles called The Groundlings. And I could be incorrect on this, but I know that my friend and he back in the 70s were in an improv group. So I don't know if it was the Groundlings or it was something else, but she knew him before he was ever famous. And she was saying even then, it was just so apparent what a genius this man was. They all knew he was destined to be a star, but she knew him when he was just a nobody, so to speak. Um, yeah, let's see here. I remember, oh God, the Andy Kaufman special when he had a serious conversation with Howdy Doody, like Meeting of the Minds. No, I've never seen that. Is that on YouTube? I'd love to see that. Oh my god. I mentioned here once before, my late friend Bart Andrews, who wrote the I Love Lucy book, when he and his sister were little kids in the 1950s, they grew up in New York. They used to, go to not tapings because the show was done live, but to actual broadcasts of the Howdy Doody show. You know, the peanut gallery, they used to call the little kids in the audience the peanut gallery. They were part of the peanut gallery. And Bart had one of those mass-produced Howdy Doody string puppets, which he gave to me, and I have it actually hanging in my kitchen right now. Um, oh, yeah, I remember that Jim Carrey was incredible in that movie, Man on the Moon. I haven't seen that movie, oh my gosh, since it came out, I think, like, more than 25 years ago, but I didn't realize that was in there. I'd have to look at it again. Um, but yeah, Andy Kaufman, I'm sure it would have been interesting to have known him in person. I'm almost curious to see how sane he was in real life as opposed to the image that he often projected when he was working. Um, I know there are a handful of people around. I think it was the comedian Elaine Boozler. She was speaking of it. She actually took care of him when he was dying of lung cancer, and she spoke so adoringly of him. He must have had a sweet side to him underneath all of that. But yeah, anyway, it was the SNL special. You know, it hit me on a number of levels last night. Just the part of me that thought, wow, I'm watching the 50th anniversary of a show I watched when it premiered. And here it is 50 years later. And then I would see on the special so many people that I have known or met. And even the original SNL people. I've told this story. I had only lived in Los Angeles less than a month, and I was working in Westwood Village, which is near the UCLA campus, for anyone who is not familiar with Los Angeles. And that was, when I first moved here, I had one of my neighbors in my building said, "Well, have you met any celebrities yet?" And I said, "No, I've been here 2 weeks and I haven't met a single celebrity." And she said, "Oh, I promise you, you're going to meet celebrities. Don't even worry about it. You're going to." And it was the next week I started working in Westwood Village. And let's see, the very first one was Steve Gutenberg, who was at that time very big. The movie Cocoon had just come out. I had seen Cocoon in the movie theater. It was the last movie I ever saw in Richmond, Virginia before I moved to California the next week. And then here I am seeing him in person. And then Sissy Spacek came in. And that was really cool. This was a not that many years after Coal Miner's Daughter, and she'd won her Oscar. And also I knew that she lived in Charlottesville, Virginia with her husband, and which is not far from Richmond. And so that was a little conversation icebreaker. And I said, "Well, I'm from your area." And she goes, "Oh, really? Well, where's that?" She's probably a little on guard. And I said, "Oh, Richmond, Virginia." And she didn't comment further, but she was very sweet to me. But anyway, what really, really excited me was Gilda Radner. Gilda Radner. So she would have been like the third celebrity I ever met after coming out to LA. And that was special. That was really special. She was always my favorite on the original SNL. I thought she was just a genius. There was such a purity to Gilda's comedy. I mean, where it was just she was like a little girl playing in the sandbox, just in her joy and in her fun. That's what I mean. There was just such a purity to her characters, to her comedy. And I always thought that made her rise above a lot of the other players. Not to put anyone down because I think that whole cast was supremely talented, but Gilda just I think Gilda's the one who really touched our hearts. In fact, Lorne Michaels was even talking about that. I saw an interview somewhere on social media around the 50th anniversary, and he said, yeah, the first two people on that show to ever connect with the audiences and the audiences to embrace them were Chevy Chase and Gilda Radner. He said he was very aware of that right in the beginning. Those were, like, in his opinion, the first two stars to come from that show. And uh, and of course, I loved when Gilda played Lucy, and it was still in the first season of the show. And I think all of those shows, I think it may be Hulu or Peacock. I don't know. I've been really bad about watching TV lately, but it's one of the streaming channels. They've, if I'm not mistaken, they've got every single episode, the entire 50 seasons of the show. So you can see this. It was the first year, and it was when Desi Arnaz had just published his autobiography, appropriately titled A Book. And I, even as a kid, huge I Love Lucy fan, and that was that I had asked for that book for Christmas that year, and I got it. And I remember Christmas Day just reading that book from cover to cover, and it was like, I think like 2 months later, I think it was like February of '76, I could be wrong on that. Desi Arnaz, he was doing promo for his book, and he hosted the show. And so they have Gilda Radner with the Lucy wig on, the makeup, the eyebrows, everything. She's playing Lucy Ricardo to the real life Ricky Ricardo, and it is just so endearing and so sweet. Granted, the comedy is not top notch as it could be, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And to me, that's magical. One of the greatest moments. And if I'd had my way about that special last night, I would have incorporated a few clips like that into the show. Uh, oh well, but it wasn't up to me. Oh yeah, where did you see that special Bob and Ray along with Gilda, Lorraine, and Jane? I do remember that. I wonder if that's on YouTube. Where Gilda did a Vitamin Benjamin spoof. What an anchovy iron press in that special. No, no, I don't remember that. I remember the special. That's all I do. Um, but I'll look for it. What I remember is when Gilda did another takeoff on Lucy. Oh, I don't have to tell you, Gilda Radner was a huge Lucille Ball fan, and there was such an influence. And it was a takeoff from the Candy Factory, and they had Dan Aykroyd doing his Mr. Mooney for some. Sorry, I'm starting to cough there. And pardon me. I so hoped I wasn't going to be coughing, but got this far without it. So it was the assembly line, only it was Mrs. Ricardo. These are nuclear warheads. They're armed and very dangerous. And her job, I know it's absurd. These nuclear warheads were going by on an assembly line, and Lucy had to put whipped cream and a cherry on top of each one. I don't know why. It was more an excuse just to parody it. And I think the writers didn't know what to really do with it. Probably Gilda begged to do the sketch. I bet you that's the reason. Anyway, Mr. Mooney walks in on Lucy, scares her, she drops the bombs, and she blows up the country. And they have this cheesy bit at the end where they're all covered in black and hair's all messed up and there's smoke all over the place. And she's going, "Does this mean I'm fired?" And he goes, "Mrs. Ricardo, it means we're going to spend 15 years in the basement with some canned goods." And then Lucy turns to the camera. Wow. Anyway, that was Gilda doing Lucy. And um, I thought it was, there have been others who have tried to impersonate Lucy and maybe have done it with more technical accuracy. But nobody put more love into it than Gilda Radner. And Lucy was there was an interview with Lucy. It was done for the Museum of Television and Radio, and she was asked, "Well, have you seen any of the people who've impersonated you?" And she said, "Oh, no, I haven't seen that many." And then someone said, "Well, what about Gilda Radner on Saturday Night Live?" And she said, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that." Now, I always thought that was kinda curious Lucy said that because the night that Desi Arnaz hosted the show and Gilda played her, Desi Arnaz Jr., their son, was also in the episode, so I find it very hard to believe Lucy was not watching that episode that night, so I don't know why maybe she just didn't wanna comment on it, maybe she wasn't happy with it, maybe she didn't want to say anything bad about Gilda, I don't know what it was, but Gilda, you know, that when Lucy died in, Cedar Sinai, I think she was on, like, the 7th floor of the hospital, and Gilda, she was in the final stages of cancer, and she was 2 floors above and died 3 weeks after Lucy. But, Gilda, in her very weakened state, when she heard that Lucy was in the hospital 2 floors down, she insisted on sending flowers to her from one comedian to another. It had meant so much to her. Um, but I need to look at some comments here. Um Oh, wait, yeah, Lucy Arnaz said she did watch it with her mother in Colorado. I knew Lucy Arnaz had watched it because Lucy Arnaz did not like it. I remember that comment, but I didn't know for sure about her mother, but I figured her mother had to have seen it, but it was just odd Lucy claimed that she had never seen Gilda impersonate her. Um Oh, what was that? Terra Destroyer, not so easy to take care of pets when one's under the weather. I hope you're having someone help you out with her. Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Um, I can take care of Sasha. She's right here. I'm not gonna wake her up again. I'm petting her right now. No, it was okay. I wasn't too sick to take care of my cat, but thank you for your concern. But Sasha was very protective of me. She kept staying on my chest and just watching me and guarding me and purring because purring has healing energy. And wait, what's that? Tara, why are you lifting my lines? Hmm. Well, Ward, I don't know what that's about. I don't know what to tell you. We'll have to see how this plays out. Sorry about that. Um, but anyway, I'm okay. Sasha's okay. Bottom line. Um, but Gilda, getting back to my meeting with her, in Westwood Village, she was very sad that day. And this was before I had learned, shall we say, celebrity etiquette, which I learned very, very quickly. Celebrity etiquette, when you meet a celebrity, you don't gush over them unnecessarily. You don't take too much. Yes, thank you, Joyce, for doing that. Thank you. Thank you for being my administrator there. Hopefully, Ward, we've solved that problem there. Um, what was I saying? Yeah, she was celebrity etiquette, you don't gush, you don't take too much of their time, you be very polite, and you be to the point. Well, I was like, "Oh, Gilda, I just love you. I think you're incredible. I think you're wonderful. Oh, I used to watch you on SNL." Well, I cringe now thinking about it. But Gilda was very polite, and she was like, "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you," like that. But I could tell she was not in the mood to talk. She was very polite to me. But just, she was in a very human moment. She was very sad. She was very preoccupied. And in hindsight, I wish I had left her alone. But I'm also glad I got to at least have a little exchange with her because it was the fall of 85 and I couldn't understand why she was so sad. What was wrong? And then where I was working, we had big windows so I could see Westwood Village. And this was back in the days when it was very hustling and bustling and busy, and I would see Gilda almost every day walking the sidewalks, and sometimes I'd be on my lunch break, and she'd pass me, and but Gilda would be like, just walking around aimlessly and just looking up at the sky, looking up at the clouds, and I'd sometimes see her walking around for hours, and I thought, "Why? Why are you so sad? What's wrong?" And then it wasn't until I read her autobiography, which was published after her death, 1989. I think it came out, like, a few weeks later, and I found out the reason she was in Westwood Village during the fall of '85 was because she was going to UCLA. She was having what she thought was chronic fatigue. That in itself would make put you in a bad mood and make you very depressed and give you a lot of brain fog. But the other thing was, as she said in her book, she was going to UCLA for testing. She and Gene Wilder very much wanted to have a child, and she couldn't understand why she couldn't conceive. Gene was tested, everything was okay for him. It was something with her, and they could never pinpoint it. So that's when I would see Gilda walking the streets just in a fog, sad, and yeah. And then it was like early, like February or March of '86, that's when they diagnosed the ovarian cancer. And at that point, the I mean, I say the idiot doctors, they should have found this. With all that testing they were doing. I understand she had a tumor about the size of a small grapefruit or something. It was terrible. And poor woman, they had to do a radical hysterectomy on her, everything. It was all gone. And of course, Gilda within 3 years herself would be dead. I didn't mean to get gloomy there, but I can't help but be moved when I see Gilda. I couldn't help but be moved at the end of the SNL special. You saw Chevy and Lorraine Newman and Jane Curtin. In my opinion, they should have been in the front, not shoved in the back. I don't know what that was about. They had Garrett Morris. They did give him his spot, but they should have had the other cast members all there together, and they should have taken their own bow and been acknowledged by the audience. But there was the sweetest thing. Lorraine and Jane were holding up a picture of Gilda Radner, so Gilda could be there and be represented, and that hit me. That hit me, and I saw that. And Lord, Miss Radner showed her character by being polite to you despite your gushiness, despite her own serious burdens. Oh, yeah. I have said this many times on here because I'm always asked, you know, because I've met over 500 celebrities in my lifetime, possibly more. But I once started making a list and I came up. I was shocked myself how many names I had in all the years I've lived here. But I've people want the big question I get, tell me who the mean people are. Who was mean to you? Who are the bitches? Who? And my answer is almost always almost none. I would say 99.5% of the celebrities I have met have been wonderful. They've been polite, they've been gracious. Like Gilda, you're right. Gilda showed her character. She was polite to me. And despite her own burdens, she was very conscious. This was a fan being sincere with her and sending her love. And she was acknowledging that. Yeah. So, but I see that all the time with celebrities. I'm hard pressed to think of anyone who's actually been awful. There was one, but and I'm not going to name her. She's not worth naming, but it was this was not even a star. She was like one of those wannabe stars, She you can't even call her a has been because she was a never was. But she was so mean. So much of a, shall we say, to put it politely, see you next Tuesday. One of the nastiest human beings I've ever encountered in my life. And I never forgot her because I was just starting my job. I was learning, and she just was so wretched to me. But other than that, I haven't had bad experiences with celebrities. But anyway, that was my thing about Gilda. May have told it before, but I thought it was appropriate now because of SNL. But I started to think of other SNL people I have met over the years. I even wrote a few down so I could even think of them, like Anna Gasteyer, Rob Schneider, Dana Carvey, Maya Rudolph, Jay Moore, um, Kristen Wiig, let's see, Jimmy Fallon. Oh, he's a sweetheart. Jimmy Fallon, I once spent almost an hour with him putting together a nutritional program. And, there's some celebrities you meet, they're different in person. Like I've mentioned about comedians being very subdued, and then there's some, they're exactly the same in person as what you see on TV. Jimmy Fallon, what you see on TV is what you get in person. It's like I said about Dolly Parton, Angela Lansbury. Those are people. What you saw on television is what you got in real life. Anyway, Jimmy Fallon was just the sweetest, sweetest guy. Beautiful manners. Um, he would introduce himself to everyone, wanted to come up and meet him. He'd go, "Hi, I'm Jimmy." He always made a point. He was very polite to people. Will Ferrell, I used to encounter him a lot. And I think he is the classic example of somebody who is so different in real life, very, very outrageous with his comedic characters. In person, extremely subdued, and one of the most polite people I've ever encountered, like very old-fashioned gentlemanly manners, like, "Yes, ma'am," "No, sir," those kind of manners. Um, I found that very endearing about him. And, Garrett Morris, I used to see him a lot, so Garrett and Gilda were my 2 connections with the original not what they called the not ready for prime time players, the original SNL during those first 5 years. Um, let's see here, Jay Moore was nice to me. In fact, this was back in my actor days when I had this naive idea that I was gonna submit an audition tape to Saturday Night Live. 'Cause I had done improv work and stuff and characters, and I didn't have agent representation at the time. That in itself was, was a red flag. You don't get too far without an agent submitting you for things. But I had this grandiose notion that I was gonna make a VHS tape audition showing what I was gonna do and send it. And Jay Moore, I asked him, "How do I get an audition tape to Saturday Night Live?" And he gave me the name of Marcy Klein, the casting director. Very gracious about that. But he warned me. He said, "I gotta tell you something. Those were" I guess it's okay to tell this personal story Jay said to me. He said, "Those were 3 of the worst years of my life. I couldn't wait to get off that show." He said, "It is not a happy show to work on. It's extremely cutthroat. Everybody is out to stab the back of the other cast members. Everybody is trying to get their sketches and their material on the show. A lot of stuff gets cut right at the last minute. Even during the dress rehearsal, people would get their skits cut." So he said there was so much bitterness, there was so much fighting, there was so much sabotage behind the scenes. And he said that Lorne Michaels actually encouraged that. Lorne Michaels wanted a survival of the fittest atmosphere, like throw everybody into the lion's den. Who doesn't get eaten by a lion and survives becomes a star. That was basically it. So he wanted that cutthroat environment. But so Jay Moore actually warned me about that. And I saw years later that I think it was Rosie O'Donnell was talking about this. And she said it had been her dream since a teenager to be on SNL, to host the show, and she finally got her wish, and she said it was a miserable show. She just confirmed what Jay Moore had told me. She said it just shattered her. It shattered all of her. Look who wants to be on camera now. It just shattered all of her um, perceptions about the show and all of her dreams, and, said she never wanna do something like that again, and she was also she spoke of Mike Myers. She said, "Ooh, that is not a happy person." So, anyway, that came to mind there. I should look at some comments here. I was surprised that no one paid tribute to Don Pardo. He's such a tower of an announcer for NBC. Yes, I know that he was still announcing for that show well into his 90s. He should have been mentioned. It was just like I felt that as I said, the original surviving not ready for primetime players. There are 5 still living. 4 of the 5 were there, and, they gave Lorraine Newman a little moment to herself. They gave Garrett Morris a moment, but I don't know, did Chevy and Jane just decline? Maybe they were asked to participate, but I thought they should have come out, the fo the 4 of them on the stage. They should have come out without anybody else and been there and had their little moment and taken a bow and let the audience embrace them. They deserve that 50 years later, so I don't know why that was. Um Is Sasha ready for a Nine Lives ad? If I could make some money off of her, I would do it. Oh, Joyce, was there a clip with Don Pardo? Maybe I missed that. Um, but it was a good show. I mean, it wasn't always laugh out loud funny, but at least it wasn't a bomb. At least it wasn't embarrassing. As we know, some episodes in SNL can be. Every skit at least had some kind of merit. And there were just so many wonderful people there. They finally got Meryl Streep to do a skit. Oh, I wish they would get her to host the show. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that was hysterical, playing the redneck mother like that. It was a little crude, and it was very out of character for Meryl Streep, but you could see she was having a blast. And Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson was there. He's been retired for many years. I think he's like 87 or 88 now. So it's fun to see him in the audience, and Cher was there, and but they had a nice gathering, and it just felt like a warm, festive party, and I was really surprised by the length. I knew it was gonna be 3 hours. I didn't Oh, no, Jack Nicholson was just in the audience, he didn't perform. But it went on for 3.5 hours. I was really surprised that final 30 minutes, it was still going on, and then I started to think, "Is this gonna go on till midnight?" I think many of us would have been fine with it. It was the show that we would have wanted. But I always try to incorporate personal stories here. I mentioned the people that I had met from the show over the years. There might have been more, but those were the ones that came to mind. Kristen Wiig, I used to see her a lot. Now, Kristen Wiig, very intelligent woman, very, very intellectual, very intelligent. She's one of those people you have to be on your toes when you talk to her. And I wish I could have gotten her to do one of her characters for me, but I never I had to be careful, not to go too far and ask for things like that, but I was hoping. It didn't happen. Um, Now Molly Shannon, I used to see her a lot. Molly is the sweet you wanna talk about a sweet human being, it's Molly Shannon. Molly can be a little kooky, a little nutty, but in the best way, in the best sense of the word. She's just warm and endearing and um, friendly. And I used to always look forward to when she would come into the store. Garrett Morris, I mentioned, I used to talk to him a lot. A lot. He used to be one of my regulars many years ago. So I think, yeah, I covered people. Maybe another one will come to mind. But let's see, what's this about Ruth Gordon? Ruth Gordon had a bad experience on Saturday Night Live. Miss Gordon had such a tense time. As soon as the NBC light went off, she walked out through the studio audience to the street to avoid anyone else in the cast. Interesting. Ah, I know I have a book. I haven't looked at it in a long time. It's about those first 5 years of SNL. It may be in there. Maybe I'll look that up a little more. That's interesting. I'm sorry. I think I vaguely remember when she hosted the show. I think I should look at that. I wonder what happened for her. I don't know if it was a case maybe because of her age, because it was such a youth at that time in particular, it was a very youth-oriented show, very youth-oriented. Even Lorne Michaels was like a kid back then. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, because I know that when Milton Berle hosted the show, that did not go over well either. He clashed with a lot of the cast members, and he clashed with Lorne Michaels, and they more or less treated him like he was an old dinosaur or something. Uh, oh my god, they wanted to do jokes about her dying on stage. That's horrible. Poor thing. I'm really sorry to hear that. Um, well, I know the show was known even then, right in the beginning, for being very outrageous, pushing the limits of taste. Like, how far could they go? But I guess when it comes to insulting a guest like that, that's never right. Um, but I was going to talk about I'm trying to tie this in with personal experiences with SNL. And this goes back to when I wanted to submit a VHS audition tape, and Jay Moore gave me the casting director, Marcy Klein's name. In fact, I think she's still with the show to this day. So anyway, I was really, really in my naivete thinking, oh, they're just going to watch my tape and summon me to New York. And yeah, I know. But it was a fantasy of mine. And I was doing a lot of creative visualization meditations in those days. I've talked about Shakti Gawain, creative visualization. You meditate, you visualize your dream and you make it happen. And anyway, I was doing all these visualizations about being on Saturday Night Live and being amongst the cast. Well, they say that when you're putting a dream out to the universe, sometimes you need to be specific, because the way it manifested for me was, let's just put it this way, I manifested it, but not where it did me much good. Um, this was in the late 90s, and it was when I was living in West Hollywood, and there was a movie being made at the time on location. I think it was called A Night at the Roxbury, and it was starring Will Ferrell and oh god, I can't remember the other guy. They used to do these characters, and anyway, the movie featured lots and lots of cameos of SNL cast members who were currently on the show. And at the time, they were filming at this little strip mall thing that was next to my apartment building. And there was a parking lot between that building and my building. And I had a little balcony on the second floor. And one day I'm home and I hear all these voices outside in the parking lot. I think, is my TV on? Because I was hearing all these people from Saturday Night Live open up my curtains literally 10 feet below me. Almost the entire cast of Saturday Night Live, literally outside my window. Literally. And I thought, "Oh my god, the universe heard all my visualizations but didn't complete it. No, I was supposed to be on the show with those people." No, but anyway, all of them were practically delivered to my doorstep, the cast of SNL. So I always find that very, very funny and kind of ironic, and I thought, well, that's certainly a story that ties in with the 50th anniversary of SNL. So that's most of my material for today. Um, and I got the idea for this because, yeah, well, I got a live show yeah, out of it. Um, it was last week and I was doing this. There's Sasha. Uh, come here. She's purring. Oh, and she wants down. Then she's gonna come and go pick me up again. So, I was doing the show with Whimsy last week, and we were trying to find some fun topics to talk about. She said, "I don't wanna talk about Trump. I don't wanna talk about what's going on in the government. Please, please, we just gotta find some nice, happy topics, some neutrality." And she said, "Let's talk about the, 50th anniversary of SNL." And, we were going to do fix my hair here. We were gonna do an author interview at the end of the show. That's what we do once a month. We have an independent, self-published author come on the show, and we read their book and we interview them, and our guest couldn't make it, so we ended up taking that final 30 minutes and talking about SNL. And I said, "Well, I've got some material here for my show for next week." Whimsy had never told me this before. Yes, Sasha. Uh, I don't know if you remember the Coneheads movie. I'm sure you know the Cone. Here. Okay, Sasha, are you going to behave? You going to be a good girl? She's here thinking, I don't know if I'm gonna be good or not. Let me think it over. Um, but Whimsy had never told me this, that when they were making the Coneheads movie back, I think in the '90s, she and her ex-husband were extras in that movie, and they got fitted for those cones. And I said, "Whimsy, please, please, please tell me you've got a photograph of yourself." And she said, "I don't. No." But, she said that, they would keep the extras waiting out in a parking lot at Paramount off the soundstage. They'd be all there in their Conehead makeup, and Dan Aykroyd would personally go out there to keep their spirits up, to cheer them up, to keep them laughing, and he'd be in his full Conehead costume, and he'd be talking to them in that voice. Remember, "We are from France," and all the extras, they had to learn to talk in that voice also, and Whimsy even demonstrated it on the show. So I thought, "Whimsy, you actually topped one of my stories then." But, oh my god, I love those characters. Remember, "We are from France." The time they did a takeoff on Family Feud, and it was the Conehead family. I forget who the other family was, but it was the Conehead family. And one of the questions that came up was, "Name something you eat with eggs." And Beldar goes, "Fiberglass." Oh my god. There was just such a purity to all those comedy characters. There was something just effortless. It was almost like a souffle. So many times when you watch SNL now, a lot of the humor is forced. They're trying too hard. You don't see that so much in those first 5 years. What's it? Oddly enough, Dan and Jane had better chemistry as Baldar and Pymat, is that her name? In the movie than on Saturday Night Live. My guess is because I did see that movie in the theater. I wasn't too thrilled with it actually, but I could see where they approached it more as actors, film actors than as skit actors, where they took it a little more seriously. They actually built like a history, a background for the characters. They established the relationships more. And I think that's probably why Dan and Jane had more chemistry. I'm sure they just pursued it, I guess, as two actors who would be playing a husband and wife in a movie, and they wanted to have at least a sense of love, a little sense of romance there. Joyce, my big brother, absolutely loves the Coneheads. Yeah. Um, oh, there were so many great characters on there. I remember that nerd family, Lisa Lubner and her mother, and oh, and Bill Murray is our boyfriend, Todd. That was so funny, Todd. I forgot to laugh. Remember that? Um, but yeah, yeah, that was great. Let me see. I'm looking at some of the comments here. Yes, Joyce, learning that Whimsy was one of the Coneheads. Yes, we must never let her live that down. Doctor, yes. egg salad, especially with what eggs cost right now. I don't know what they're like in your area, but, I saw them going for 15.99 at Trader Joe's here in Los Angeles. Needless to say, I'm not eating eggs right now. Um, oh, that's right, Mrs. Loopner always served egg salad sandwiches. Joyce, where's Whimsy been? Oh, she's around, very much around. We still do our show every Tuesdays in she's in Portland, Oregon. I'm here in Los Angeles. But if you mean this week, Whimsy is, I'm sure she doesn't mind me saying this, Puerto Vallarta. And oh, yes, and Tang. Yes, egg salad sandwiches and Tang. It's what the astronauts drink. No, Whimsy, bless her soul, she cares so much about her people and what's going on, and being, an empath, she's a wonderful naturopathic doctor. I mean, brilliant naturopathic doctor. And she's also a gifted intuitive, tarot reader, heart-centered remote viewing. And she has an enormous following because of all of her YouTube shows. And so she has been, let's just say, since a certain orange man became president, she has been deluged with people scared out of their mind, frantic, worried, people like, I'm going to lose my Social Security. I'm going to lose my benefit, what have you, everything. So Whimsy said to me, Chuck, I've just got to get away. I've just got, from my mental health, I need to take a little vacation. I need to take care of myself. So needless to say, we're not doing Taco Tuesdays tomorrow. Um, I need to send her a message and just see how she's doing, but I hope she's having a fabulous time because she so deserves it. That woman works very hard and she gives so much of herself, and she's been such a personal mentor to me. I wouldn't even be doing this show if it weren't for what Dr. Whimsy Anderson. She's the one who got me into all of this. And Joyce, you were there at the beginning with me also. Um, Whimsy has always been about getting me out of my comfort zones. I've told how I was kicking and screaming initially, "Whimsy, I can't do a live show. I can't do this." She's like, "Yes, you can. Yes, you can." And so here we are. And now I'm doing this, and I've been doing videos for this channel. And um, I guess while I'm at it, I might as well give a plug here to my dear friend Pam of her channel, Pomona Remembers, and also her other channel, Eli and Eden Creative. We've only done a couple of shows so far, just kind of experiment. But I mentioned that because of all the stress, all the anxiety things are going through right now, we wanted to give people an oasis, a place where people could go to talk about their art. And Pam and I both are artists. And that was going to be the initial thing, where she'd be at her home in Canada, I'd be here in LA, and we'd do a split screen where she's working on a piece of art, I'm working on a piece of art, and we're talking about that. And we've had the idea of having other artists on the show. And by that, I mean writers, musicians, dancers, singers, poets, sculptors, any kind of art. And also the unconventional ways of thinking of art. Your art might be cooking a meal in the kitchen. It might be working in the garden, with your hands in the soil. It may be crocheting, knitting, whatever is your own personal art, your personal means of expression. What gives you joy? What gives you peace? What centers you and balances you from all of this chaos in the world right now? What is like a warm, fuzzy pink bubble around you? And so that's what we're hoping to do with these shows on her two channels. And we're just going to let it grow and evolve in whatever directions it needs to do. I got sick last week, so I couldn't work on anything. And she said some things, but we're going to eventually get back to work on doing some more shows. Um, what's this? So Dr. Whimsy's on the Mexican Riviera, if not the Gulf of. Mm-hmm. that body of water bordering Mexico. Yes. Yeah, she's in a happy place right now. At least I hope it's a happy place, and I hope she's renewing and recharging her batteries, and we will definitely be back the following Tuesday. I love doing that show. That's the show where we get into the news events and we get into politics and, more controversial things. And this show, I've dipped my toe in that water. Uh, Thankfully, I had some moderators here cutting out some nasty comments from people. I was not quite prepared for that, but that goes with the territory. But for the most part, I try to keep this one neutral and keep it more to show business and Hollywood stories. And then, of course, what I want to do with Pam will focus more on art. Um, but always open to suggestions. Let's see, I've been on here a little over an hour. My voice is held up, but I'd like to know, is there anything anybody'd like to ask about, or is a topic or anything I might know a little something about? I might be able to shed some light on it for you. Anyone? Um, let's see here. Well, anybody has otherwise I'm going to wrap it up in a minute or two. Oh wait, how is Jane Curtin these days? Oh, Chris. Hey, Chris. No, I never met Milton Berle. Oh, no, wait. I did see Milton Berle in person. I never met him. And yeah, I do have a story. This was, in fact, I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Oh, no, wait, I didn't mention it on the show. I was mentioning it to somebody else. How I went in 1991. I went to a tribute to Lucille Ball at the Television Academy I think it's Studio City. I think that's where it was at the time. And they were going to unveil a statue of Lucille Ball in the courtyard. Gary Morton, her husband, was there to do the unveiling. And then they did a lovely tribute show. A lot of people who worked with Lucy and a lot of her friends came on stage. And that was the night I got to sit next to Jerry Hausner, who played Jerry the agent. He was 83 at the time, tiny, tiny little man. I was just surprised how short he was. And he played Jerry the agent, I Love Lucy, but perhaps even more famously was Joe, the stage manager on the Vitamina Vegemin episode. Joe, is it hot in here to you? Well, that was Jerry Hausner. And I've told this before, but I got to chat with him. And, anybody's ever seen that episode where Lucy, she is in like full energy, full performance mode. If ever she was in her whole life, it was like 500,000 watts of electricity. And he had to walk out on stage, walk right up to her face, eye to eye, nose to nose almost in mid performance. And he said it was like lightning bolts coming off of her, the energy coming off of Lucy. And he said he never forgot that. Never that he got to walk up to her in mid-performance like that. So anyway, he was fascinating. But anyway, to get to the point about Milton Berle, uh, I was there through my dear friend Bart Andrews, the author of the I Love Lucy book. I was there as his personal guest, and we got to sit in the front VIP rows with all the other celebrities. I'll tell this real quick also. Bob, Carol, and Madeline Davis, the two surviving writers, the original three, Jess Oppenheimer and Madeline and Bob. Later, Bob Schiller and Bob Weisskopf joined, and I've got stories about them too. I can do another time. But anyway, I was in the same row. I was sitting next to Jerry Hausner, and just down from there, like two more seats, were Bob and Madeline. So while they were showing all the clips of I Love Lucy up on the big screen on the stage, I was spending more time watching them, watching Bob and Madeline. I wanted to see them reacting to their own work. And yes, they were laughing uproariously. But one of the things Bart told me was Milton Berle was going to be there. And Bart rolled his eyes up in his head and he said, "Oh my God." Because he had dealt with Milton before. And he said Milton was such an egomaniac and He never knew when to shut up. He would just get out on stage and nobody could stop him. He would just keep going and going and going. That might have been some of the friction, I told earlier about Saturday Night Live, how he and Lorne Michaels butted heads, and a lot of the cast members clashed with Milton Berle. And Bart said, "Oh yeah, difficult man." And Bart was going to speak in the beginning of the show, and he came back to his seat and he said, "Well, I found out they're purposely putting Milton Berle on at the very end, and I think you're going to see why." And sure enough, most of the guests who came out were on stage, 5 minutes or so, did their little bits, told their little Lucy story, maybe showed a film clip, and they left. Milton comes on stage, and I still remember this because at that point it was about 10 o'clock in the evening, and Milton did not stop talking until almost 11:30. I mean, he went on and on and on and on, which is not to say he wasn't entirely funny. I've got to be fair to him there. And for me, being in the front rows and seeing Milton Berle, this was someone I had seen since I was a kid on television, so it was a big deal for me. But he kind of set the tone in the very beginning with pure vulgarity. He comes out and says, "I'm so pleased to be doing this benefit for Lucille Testicle." And the audience was like, "Oh." There was such a groan in the theater, and I thought Lucy up in heaven, if she was watching this, was probably, "I can't believe he did that." But that's how he started the show. And it just went on from there. So anyway, Chris, that was my one and only encounter with Milton Berle. Uh yeah, Lord, I guess, Milton Berle was one of those taskmasters. He had his own show in the 50s, and I'm sure he was very used to being the one who ran everything. Um, from what I understand, Sid Caesar was the very same way, very egotistical, very demanding. And of course, his show is distinguished by the fact you had people like Mel Brooks, Woody Allen, Neil Simon as part of the writers on that show, and they all confirm the stories. Oh, yeah, and Carl Reiner, of course, because Carl Reiner, a few years later, and he created the Dick Van Dyke Show, admitted the Alan Brady character was meant as a parody of Sid Caesar. You know, the the Alan Brady character, very egotistical, very full of himself, everybody having to kiss his ass, that type of thing. He said that's what it was like working with him. And I have a feeling Milton Berle was the same way. Um, Oh, yeah, I knew that about Milton Berle being a child performer in, the Chaplin film, Tilly's Punctured Romance, which was 1914. 1914, and, of course, the wonderful Marie Dressler. Yeah, Chris, you were saying, he tried to run the SNL appearance. I'm sure. I'd have to look back on the specifics of it, but it was my understanding Lorne Michaels hated that show so much. I later found out this wasn't true, but there was a claim at the time that he demanded the videotape be erased or be destroyed so it could never be seen again. That's how much he hated working with Milton Berle and hated the experience of it. But I mentioned earlier about like I think it's Hulu or one of the streaming channels. They've got all 50 seasons. So I might look to see if the Milton Berle episode's on there because can't recall ever seeing it. But that was my experience with Milton Berle. And let's see. Now that's interesting. John Belushi was the one performer who deferred to Berle while the others chafed. No, that's interesting. That is interesting. I bet you. Gotta remember this was in the 70s, so John Belushi was probably a little boy in the 50s. I don't know how old he would have been, boy or teenager, but probably watched the original Burl show back in the 50s and recognized him to be one of the greats and had probably saw him as like a comic god or something. Um, but I'm trying to think of others who ran their shows. I understand Danny Thomas, he was quite a taskmaster with his show. Oh, yeah, he was born in 1949, so he would have been a boy in the 50s. Um, I still remember the day John Belushi died. I was rehearsing a play at the time, and it was such a shock. Yeah, he was so young, so talented. Um, well, may you rest in peace. But let's see. Yeah, and well, even Jackie Gleason was very much the boss of his show, and Lucy, and even the people who directed the show, like Bill Asher, who did over 100 episodes of I Love Lucy, still made it very clear the Lucy had the final word on everything, and she would chew up and spit out directors if they were not strong enough to stand up to her, and that was something Bill Asher had to learn very early on, to really be tough and stand up to her. But Lucy knew everything. She knew the lighting, she knew the cameras, she knew just about every technical aspect of filmmaking, and so people knew to defer to her. So anyway, does anybody else have a comment or a question before I sign out here? Anything? Anything related to SNL, Milton Berle, old TV, Lucy? Oh, Ward, you're asking how does Jane Curtin these days? Well, I saw her last night. I looked her up. She's 77 now. And I thought she looked good. I know the last thing I can think of professionally, there was a sitcom about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I can't even remember the name of it. I can't remember who starred on it. I just remember the show where it was about a young man and his wife, and his mother was living with him, and she played the somewhat overbearing mother and mother-in-law on there. And the only reason, frankly, I watched that show was to see Jane Curtin. I always thought she was a great underrated talent. I was really happy when she got that show, Kate and Ally, and she won a couple of Best Actress Emmys for that. It was a chance for her to finally, there's Sasha, to finally be more of a leading lady star. And I always thought Jane Curtin could have had a film career, and I don't know why that never happened. And the other one I think about a lot, I always thought Lorraine Newman was tremendously underrated. And I can think of very little. I need to look her up, but I can think of very little she ever did after SNL. Maybe she just wanted to leave show business. And last night she looked incredible. Look her up. She's 72 now. Um, but anyway, let's see. Any other comments here before I go? Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you, Joyce. Thank you for your compliment, and thank you for joining, and thank you, Ward. And uh, apologize for the times I had to blow my nose or I had to cough, but I think for the most part I got through this and my voice held up. And Sasha didn't jump on the keyboard, even though I know she would like to. But can you make up your mind? Do you want to be on the show, Sasha? There we go. She's a sweet little girl. Anyway, I guess I'm going to wrap up the show now. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you next week. I'll see you Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Goodbye, everybody. And I really, really appreciate your being here. It means a lot to me. Thank you. Bye.